Or shuffle. It is September 20th, 2023, a very rainy and stormy day in Florida, at least in my area. I am, of course, flying Ryan Go Chris along with.
Tampa Motormouth Joel Vril, yeah, same. Not exactly what you would call a good beach day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a good day to go outside and do anything. Now, given it's Florida, that's kind of what you call summer. You don't want to go
Mm.
outside and die in the heat, so not a huge surprise. But
It's
yeah, today's
it,
the
it's a,
lightning death variety.
yeah, it's a change between either the heat index feels like you're walking on the sun or you get drowned. So, take your pick.
Yeah, so we've got some bigger news, as my computer wants to have a spasm. And let me refresh if I can. Maybe everything just died. I don't even know. Joel, can you still hear me?
Yep, I still can.
All right, so everything's just frozen up, but it's still working. Big news before the show started. Cam Akers has officially been traded away from the Los Angeles Rams, going to the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings will get Cam Akers, and there's also a swap of 2026 late round picks. That's probably going to be something like a fifth rounder going to the Rams for Cam Akers and a seventh. Nothing too exciting for the Rams, saying Cam Akers was formerly a second round pick, but for fantasy, Kyron Williams took over that job last week. Cam Akers leaving can only put him in a better situation. For the Vikings side, Alexander Madison has not been efficient on the ground, given the offensive line has been absolutely terrible for the Vikings, and that's not going to just change because they got a new running back. So, what do you think this means for Akers, Madison, the Vikings as a whole, and what we're going to see going forward?
Yeah, it just depends. That's the big question: is how much does it affect Madison's value, and can we see Cam Akers of old, and will it really matter with how up and down the Vikings are?
Yeah, the Vikings have a turnover problem. I think they've got 7 or 8 in the first 2 games. They've lost both games, both the 2-0 teams, by the way, but they've been very competitive. 2 1-score losses. They just didn't turn. I mean, Justin Jefferson lost the ball going into the end zone at one point, and they lost by 6. So, right there, that's enough to have possibly flipped the outcome of the game. But, of course, now Cam Akers will join the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see what that means long term. I think if you have Madison, this can't be considered good news. If you have Cam Akers, it can't be considered any worse news than that Kyron Williams was essentially the starter in week number 2. Now, I will say the other big, big, big news from week number 2 is the injury to one Nick Chubb.
Oh yeah, because
There were tweets that were not true floating around Monday night that amputation of the leg was on the table. Turns out all of the arteries and stuff like that remained intact, but that's really about it for his left knee. It's the same knee he injured at Georgia. Did come back and have a great year that time. He had an injury in 2015, came back in 2016, was pretty solid. So there is still hope. He is 26, 27 years old, not young in NFL running back standards, but he was off to a great start on the season and in this game. Unfortunate side knee hit from Minka Fitzpatrick with the foot planted as he's engaged with another guy. And it is, if you haven't seen it, you don't need to. Basically, a knee is supposed to go forward and backwards, and it went dead sideways, 90-degree angle that way. You don't need to see it. Take my word for it. It is gross. But
yeah, that's sort of one of those that you realize that, okay, do I really want to hunt this down? No. Anytime that you have an entire stadium gasp when they see a highlight,
yeah,
that's pretty much
immediately
all you need to
the
know.
ESPN ABC broadcast said we are not showing that again. And you knew when they put it on the video board at Acrisure Stadium, Heinz Field, when you hear the entire Pittsburgh Steelers home crowd, oh no, all at once. Apparently, they were chanting Chubb's name as he was carted off the field. A great show of respect from the Pittsburgh fan base for a hated rival player. But Nick Chubb on and off the field seems to be just an absolute class act. Great guy, great player. And we definitely hope for the best of luck in his recovery and that he will be able to get back on the field next year. Hopefully, he'll have a Javonte Williams type of return where he's back, ready to go week 1, and all is pretty much behind him.
Yeah, because it's just absolutely brutal way to go out. As I saw that you had somebody pointing out that last three Monday night football games have some question of curses. Of course, Damar Hamlin last year,
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers, and now Nick Chubb.
So now the bad things come in three crowds. You've been satisfied, so hopefully no more going forward. However, I do want to point out Joe Burrow re-aggravated his calf injury last week, and he plays on Monday night. It is another doubleheader, so he's not the only one, but the Bucks, the Eagles, the Rams, and
Because the
Bengals
last
all play.
doubleheader was so much fun.
The doubleheader is fine if you have the YouTube TV NFL package where you can split screen it. However, you want better games than what we got, and that's a whole different problem. That's not the fault of the doubleheader. That's just the fault of the teams. Anyways, again, the big news: Cam Akers has been traded to the Vikings. Nick Chubb is going to be out for the season. Jerome Ford is going to be the starter, even though the Browns did sign familiar name with the team, one Kareem Hunt back in Cleveland after not being signed in the entire offseason. I don't know if I believe Kareem Hunt has a whole lot left. We will slowly find out. But remember, Cleveland didn't want to trade him last year. They didn't feel like they got enough value and then let him walk. No other team has signed him.
So,
There's got to be a reason
so
for it.
with both names in the news today, you would rather have Cam Akers over Kareem Hunt.
I'd rather have Cam Akers over Kareem Hunt, but I would definitely rather have Jerome Ford over all three, Madison, Akers, or Kareem Hunt right now. We'll see if that works out. Let's go through some other injury news. Jacoby Myers, who missed last week's game against Buffalo with a concussion, is limited. However, wide receiver Devontae Adams with a concussion scare was a full participant. He is going to be good to go. Should something not happen this week. Jalen Waddle, concussion protocol, a nasty hit in that Sunday night football game. Definitely was a penalty on sportsmanlike conduct, unnecessarily roughness, I should say. And
one thing, one audible is, do you think anybody should have been ejected or fined for that hit on Nick Chubb?
No. At first I did, but then he's in a pile. Minka Fitzpatrick is not intending to injure him. It's unfortunate, but that is part of the game. It looks worse, but in full speed, he's not able to target that kind of area. Breaking on the Cam Akers trade, it is Cam Akers and a 7th to Minnesota in exchange for a conditional 6th round pick. So pretty close to what I expected. Not even quite as much going back to the Rams as I expected. But Jalen Waddle out with a concussion. He hopefully will be back. Salvon Ahmed, who had a pretty good game going, out with a groin injury. Austin Eckler still not practicing. No timetable for his return.
Joshua Kelly set to once again disappoint fantasy owners.
Yeah, he didn't do great, but he did play. The Saints have signed Tony Jones to the 53-man roster. He had 2 touchdowns in relief of Jamal Williams. Kendre Miller back at practice. And, of course, Alvin Kamara 1 week away from being able to come back from his suspension. So I think at this point, it's Kamara's job when he comes back and really no competition.
Are Saints fans and fantasy managers being like the Count from Sesame Street going, one,
Yeah, I am ready. I've got Alexander Madison and Damian Pierce and Brian Robinson as my running backs in the league where I went wide receiver heavy. And 2 of those are not working out because Madison's now going to probably be in a timeshare. And Damian Pierce just doesn't have an offensive line in any way, shape, or form. For the Lions, there were 6 total players who didn't practice, but the big ones for fantasy, Amon-Ra St. Brown out with a toe injury and David Montgomery with a bruised thigh. Day-to-day, going to take a couple weeks for it to fully heal, but a bruised thigh he could probably play through. Keep an eye on his injury reports. He might be able to go next week. Anthony Richardson was at practice today, but did not go through the full work. Logan Thomas, a nasty concussion. Same guy who hit Jacoby Myers hit Logan Thomas, and both are still not practicing. DK Metcalf left the game on Sunday with a rib injury, but did not practice today. But according to Pete Carroll, hints he may not practice much this week, but indicates he'll be ready to go for the game. So that is a good thing. Austin Eckler did not practice, but was on the field watching. So that's at least a positive side of news. Justice Hill, the running back for the Ravens, suffered a toe injury that could keep him out of the week
Yet
3.
another name that some people probably spent some fab on.
I picked him up this morning when I had to drop Nick Chubb because he's out for the season, and immediately Justice Hill got hurt. That is my cursed team. The one right over here over the right shoulder by Baby Groot that says connect. 0-2, that is the cursed team. So that's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Justice Hill, the latest addition to Cam Akers is on that team as well with Nick Chubb and now Justice Hill, who is going to possibly miss some time. Yeah, sometimes fantasy is just so much fun. Anyways,
another word that begins with the letter F that we can't say.
Yeah.
Well, we could say, but we won't.
For the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk's shoulder is questionable for Thursday night's game against the Giants. He played through it on Sunday. Hopefully he can play through it again, but only time will tell. Speaking of Thursday night, no Saquon Barkley for the Giants. He is officially out for that game.
Yeah, because it was originally thought that his injury was, okay, he'll be back next week. Yeah, not so much.
Yeah, it's a quote-unquote ordinary ankle sprain. That is typically a 2 to 4 week kind of injury, depending on how fast you feel. I've had these, and they do sometimes heal in a matter of days. Sometimes it takes a couple weeks for it to fully be back to normal. When you're a high-performance athlete like Saquon, you need it to be good to go. Buccaneers did place Chase Edmond on the injured reserve. Not that he was doing anything anyways. Christian Watson limited at practice. Aaron Jones did not practice. So Christian Watson, some positive news. And Matt Breida going to get the start for the Giants because of the Saquon.
Another fab name that people are whipping up the fab bucks for.
Yeah, Dolphins left tackle Tyron Armstead is practicing along with Jalen Phillips, who both missed that game against New England. We'll get to that game later. Amari Cooper, who was probably not going to play Monday night, played very, very well, and now he is questionable, so don't believe anything about that one. He's probably going to go. CJ Stroud, no issues with the shoulder a week after leading the NFL in passing yards, so that's good for him. Saints safety Marcus May suspended for the next 3 games without pay for violating the substance abuse program. Not good news for him. And I believe that is, Bryce Young out with an ankle injury at practice today. Not good news for him. And that could be pretty much it. I mean, unless we really want to talk about Kenyon Drake going to the Ravens practice squad.
Practice? We're talking about practice.
Talking about practice squads.
Not the game. Not the game. We're talking about practice.
And again, Kareem Hunt back with the Browns. So that is the big news of the day. There was a lot. This is a very tough year so far for injuries, and it seems like it's just getting worse.
It's like, okay, wake up. Who's injured today?
Yeah, I mean, there's no good way to say it's going to get better when we don't have any evidence of that. So hopefully it will. I mean, Cooper Kupp is on the horizon.
When you tend to get a dink notification, it's like, okay, who's injured now? Expletive.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp on the PUP list should be coming off in the next couple of weeks. Alvin Kamara coming off suspension. So some guys starting to come back from different problems. But
that's how I know there's a manager who's not playing where one of my victories that I won, I'm looking over at their starting squad. It's Osdeckler, who we've known for a good portion of the week, was not playing, and Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, that's not a fun league if people aren't active. Yeah, not the best fantasy week for me. 5-9 week, not ideal. Actually, ended up being I think 7-9.
I actually held off the doing anything victory lap social media this week just because when you have something like that happen to Nick Chubb and then you're going, yeah, here's my fantasy weekend, and you're just sort of, I went 4-0 this week, but because of the Nick Chubb news, I'm like, yeah, people are probably more paying attention to that than really want to hear how good or bad guy did. in fantasy this week. But
Yeah.
yeah, doing the victory lap right now. But I know that that'll be one of those very, very few weeks when you can do that, because usually it's like 1-3, 0-4. You're happy if it's 2-2.
Yeah. Yeah, week
Because
1 was good for me. 11-5 because of the couple leagues that have the win against the median. And then last week not so good, 7-9.
and
3 winless teams, 5 undefeated. So
the only reason I was 4-0 as opposed to 3-1 was out of all people, Adam Thielen. Amazingly enough.
yeah. Adam Thielen was good
Adam
enough.
Thielen.
Wasn't great. And I will say, stole a win because of Adam Thielen and the 16-teamer to be one of 4 remaining teams that are undefeated. Both of us are undefeated, along with Drybat, who is the defending champion, and Get Off My Ditka, who has not had the most success in this type of league. So he's having a good year to start. Last 4 teams at 2-0 in our 16-team league.
We're better than the Bengals.
Oh, well, that's not saying much so far. Anyways, let's get
Yay.
into week number 2's recap. Joel had a very nice week of picks last week, and he extended his lead. He went 10-6. I went 9-7. I was a little better than my first week. Joel a little bit worse, but he still picked up games. Anyways, we'll start quickly going back to Thursday night, where the Eagles beat the Vikings 34-28, and they just crammed the ball down the Vikings' throat.
Yeah, that's because the Vikings' defense is trash.
Yeah, they're not good. But now they have Cam Akers to come and help them out, because running the ball was the only problem they had.
Yeah, because you're already looking at this game as an example of just Madison not looking great, and everyone's thinking before this trade, well, he's the RB1 just because he's pretty much all there is now. Now that Dalvin Cook's no longer in the picture, but yeah, but the other thing that you have to definitely ask going forward, now that you have it's going to be Madison, Akers, and Ty Chandler, what does that do to Chandler?
Chandler's irrelevant. Definitely not going to be there without an injury. I wonder if this wasn't a premature move, because Tampa has a very good run defense. The Eagles possibly have the best front 7 in football. And next week, it's going to get a lot easier. You're not going to face those 2 teams every week. So I think Madison would have been just fine with a little bit of patience, but that offensive line needs to get better. Anyways, let's move on to Sunday, where the Packers pull the Falcons against the Falcons. The Falcons win 25-24 after trailing by 13 in the fourth quarter. Bijan is the real deal, and this defense stood pretty good, given no Christian Watson, no Aaron Jones. The running game did not get going for the Packers. Jordan Love looked good once again, another 3-touchdown game. But I think the Packers are just a little bit too unhealthy right now to be one of those top teams in the NFC. They will get Jones back. They will get Christian Watson back. But until then, they're going to be a little tough. But the Falcons tied a 3-way tie for first to top the AFC South at 2-0. Who would have thought that whole division was going to be good, except for the Panthers? And the Falcons 2-0 for the first time, and it seems like a generation.
Yeah, Packers' A.J. Dillon definitely showed this week the difference between him and Aaron Jones. So they're probably hoping he gets back and healthy. Falcons tend to have a 2-headed monster at running back with Bijan and Tyler in there. So it's just going to be fun for fantasy football if you have both of them. Somehow that's going to be great. Or if you have either one, both of them are a top flight RB that will help some people win their leagues. And yeah, are you giving up on Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, I gave up on him last year. Until they've got a better quarterback, I don't want London. I don't want Pitts. London had a solid game. He's going to have solid games, but I think if the Falcons can get ahead, and they're going to have a softer schedule because they were a last place team last year, bottom half of the division team, I don't trust them.
And the Packers so close to actually winning if they didn't have that delay of game that put him out of uncomfortable range. I think we can call this that the Packers Plexico Burress themselves with that.
Yeah, a little bit. I think the Packers are a better team than they showed on Sunday, and once they get healthy, we'll see that. Moving on to probably the least surprising result of the week, the Bills rebound, win 38-10 over the Raiders. Josh Jacobs couldn't get anything going. Devontae Adams left for a little bit with a concussion protocol issue, but the Bills looked like the Bills. Josh Allen not quite up to his normal standard for fantasy purposes, but got the job done and then some for the Bills, who moved to 1-1. The Raiders fall to 1-1.
Yeah, because anyone who's just sort of doubting Allen, the Jets are a tough D. They showed it as and Diggs definitely is the go-to guy, getting the targets, and Cook definitely looks good, except for the red zone carries for some reason going to Harrison Murray, and you're just going like, what? As far as fantasy going, but yeah, Bills are back, and you just sort of have to wonder on the side of the Raiders that do you try to buy Jacobs because of the volume, or are you just kind of going, no?
If you can buy Jacobs, now would be a good time. No preseason for Josh Jacobs. It's going to take him a little bit to get into the swing of things. And the Bills are a very good defense. And I think you have brighter days ahead. There's a lot of running backs now that Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, all these guys that are pretty big names, and we'll come across a few more. It might be time to just try and buy them on the cheap and, take a look at some matchups. There's going to be some this week. I don't have all of them written out quite yet. But, for example, Tennessee's playing Cleveland. Cleveland's got a fairly good defense. Maybe Derrick Henry doesn't have a great week this week. Down the line, he's going to play his division, and that's going to be ridiculous. So, keep all of that in mind. Cincinnati playing LA, Vegas playing Pittsburgh. Nick Chubb was lighting Pittsburgh up, so there's some hope there. Just keep it in mind that these guys are good. They were drafted where they're drafted for a reason. Sometimes guys fall off and they bust, but Jacobs, Mixon, and Henry, some big name guys off to less than ideal starts. Henry's been okay. Had a pretty good week, actually, both weeks, but might be able to get him a little bit on the cheap. And we'll move on.
Now to a team who's not doing okay in Ohio.
Yeah. I think you start to worry about the Bengals a little bit now. Losing to Cleveland week 1 and then Baltimore week 2. That's 2 divisional losses the first 2 weeks. This one, 27-24. Ravens go to 2-0. Looks like they might be a team to reckon with in the AFC. Of course, no J.K. Dobbins for the season. Now Justice Hill possibly injured. We'll see what they look like long term, but Lamar Jackson looks pretty good so far. Mark Andrews looked like he was a lot better this week than we might have hoped. And the Bengals, 0-2, aggravated injury to Joe Burrow's calf. So going into Monday night against the Rams, they are at home at least, but going into that Monday night against the Rams, I think it's starting to become a must-win situation for the Bengals. Now, the Bengals did start 0-2 last year. So maybe it's just what they do.
As Flowers pretty much the wide receiver offense for the Ravens. The Bengals first half was total ass. Second half, more like the Bengals we know and drafted, while Nelson Aguilar is the sexy fantasy higher total. Is this sustainable?
No, I don't think so. I think for the Ravens, you want Flowers, you want Lamar, you want Andrews, and that might be the end of the list. Anything else is just a shot.
Yeah, you already have a injury concern for Lamar going into next week, as then Higgins, of course, redeemed himself for his many managers. Another question coming out of this game, granted it's only 2 weeks, but main question I think is Mixon. 2 subpar weeks to kick off the 23 campaign thus far. Script or something else?
It's hard for the the offense was terrible as a whole. Mixon was the bright spot in week number 1. Mixon did everything he could with an offense that wasn't moving. They didn't have a passing game. Last week, they were bad in the first half, and then they fell a little bit behind and had to rally a little bit. So I think it's no reason to be concerned. Brighter, again, I said Mixon is possibly a trade for Target because brighter days are going to be ahead. The Ravens have a good defense. The Browns have a good defense. Eventually, they'll play teams outside of their division where the defense is not so good, and you'll see Joe Mixon of old come back in full.
Are we taking a flight to Ford Field here?
Yes, the Seahawks took a flight to Ford Field as well and came away with a 37-31 victory over the Detroit Lions. Tyler Lockett with the game-winning touchdown in overtime to put the Seahawks ahead, one of two he had on the day. The injury to David Montgomery gives you hope that maybe Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a little more work, but we'll see about Craig Reynolds being brought up the lineup a little bit. And obviously, Laporta looked solid for a rookie. We're worried about Amon-Ra St. Brown with the injury concern now, but I think he'll be just fine. But the Seahawks, Kenneth Walker had a touchdown. Pretty much everybody had a good game except for DK Metcalf, who left the game with a rib injury. But he is a stud. He might be a low end. I actually traded for him today in a dynasty league because I think Predator days are coming for DK Metcalf. That Seahawks offense looks a lot better this week, which is good. After week one, we weren't sure about the Rams. I think we have a lot more confidence that the Rams might be a good team now. So that week one loss to the Rams doesn't look quite as bad. So maybe the panic for the Seahawks again. It's only week 2, guys. There's a lot to still be determined. There's a few teams we might know some things about now, and there's a great number of teams that we are still trying to figure out. But I think the Seahawks are one we're definitely trying to still figure out. The Lions, maybe we need to try and figure them out a little bit more too.
Yeah, because Gino is definitely more than a one-year wonder. Lions D line and their defense in general, good God, incredibly mediocre. 1 sack in 2 games. Let me say that again. 1 sack in 2 games. Of course, DK, you've got to monitor for the rib injury, as you mentioned that. I think I'm staying away from Jahmyr Gibbs now. You had all the hype. Weird usage. He just keeps running the same route over and over. Marvin Jones is on the milk carton for week 2. JSN definitely looked good, but too small a sample size.
Yeah, only time will tell. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs did get 12.6 PPR points last week, 7 attempts both games, but this week 9 targets. So I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a good fantasy asset, especially if David Montgomery misses some time. But I think maybe these are 2 teams the Seahawks, we slept on a little bit, and the Lions, we maybe were a little overhyped after week 1. Both these teams should be good NFC contenders. I don't know if any of them are Super Bowl caliber. I did pick the Lions, so hopefully they are. But it's a long season. Let's pump the brakes on the panic over the Lions losing 1 game and the Seahawks winning 1 game.
Shall we go to Houston?
I mean, if we have to.
Yeah, we have to. It's on the schedule.
Colts win 31-20. Anthony Richardson, 2 rushing touchdowns before leaving the game with a concussion. Gardner Minshew comes in and cleans things up. Tank Dell and Nico Collins for the Texans were fantastic as CJ Stroud led the league in passing yards in week number 2. Zach Moss took advantage of a soft Texans defense on the ground, gave you a good fantasy performance. Keep in mind, Zach Moss is not a very talented player, but if you're playing the Texans, you can run all over them. So keep that in mind for targeting matchups and pumping the brakes a little bit on spending heavily in the fab department for Zach Moss. He's going to be the starter at least the next couple of weeks. We'll see what happens with Jonathan Taylor down the line a little bit, but if Taylor comes back, Moss is shelved.
Plus, you also have Deion Johnson in the mix, too.
Yeah, Jackson has not done anything yet this year. He's a little bit in the doghouse because of fumbling concerns. So I think it's going to be Zach Moss's job for at least the next 2 weeks. But if Taylor decides, hey, I'm going to come back from the PUP list, I have to play a certain or be eligible to play a certain number of games. Like if they keep him on the PUP all year, I don't know if his contract tolls. I know he's got to play a few or at least be available. If he gets hurt again, so be it. That happens. And he'll be fine. But he's going to have to come back at some point to play for this season to count. Whether that's for the Colts or not, we will see. But if he comes back on the Colts, Zach Moss is just done.
And keep in mind, Anthony Richardson was out for most of the game, which opened up some running volume that normally won't be there when Richardson is healthy.
That's true as well. Gardner Minshew did look good in relief, and the Colts go to 1-0. The Texans 0-2, but another game where they had at least good fight. Bad teams, you want to see them fight on the field to stay competitive against teams that are better than them. They've done that each of the first 2 weeks, even though they have lost by a double-digit margin. Next up, we go to the Chiefs 17-9 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would say the second week in a row, the big headlining CBS game. Last week it was Cincinnati, Cleveland. This week, Chiefs, Jaguars did not quite live up to the hype. Travis Kelce back, did get a touchdown. That's good news for the Chiefs, but the Jaguars should have won this game. A lot of just near misses for touchdowns. But the Jaguars 1-1, Chiefs 1-1. Both of these teams appear to be AFC top contenders, or at least they were coming into the season. We do have some questions about both, I think, at this point. But Chiefs on the road, get a win, get to 1-1. At the very least, they are starting the ascent.
A bit of a redemption for Tony, who was going on with the Tony with the redemption. You're trying to figure out what's going on with the Jacksonville wide receivers and just not being able to finish. As Jacksonville stock is sell, like the end scene in Trading Places. Turn those machines back on. But win against a Blarg team. But then they vanish against the world champs, and the Chiefs were on a mission. They wanted to get some redemption of them for themselves after getting utterly embarrassed in Arrowhead by the Lions. Even though it was a close win, I still think that qualifies as an embarrassment when the Lions come in and they do that in your stadium. So, yeah, not exactly what you'd call the game of the day.
No, I still have a lot of concern with the Chiefs, to be honest. Jaguars are going to be a little inconsistent, a very young team. They don't have the pedigree to win every game yet. The Chiefs do. And the Chiefs are supposed to be a great offense, and they put up 17 points against the team in Jacksonville who gave it 21 to the Colts last week. So, again, it's only 2 weeks. You don't want to draw too many conclusions. I think both these teams, we still are going to go off the assumption that they're good teams and have a good future for this season. But I have a little bit of concern for the Chiefs so far. Not a lot, but enough. Next up,
they got a team that we're all smiling and happy about here in Tampa.
They are. The Buccaneers 2-0 over the Chicago Bears. Now, I do want to preface this by saying Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield has looked very good through 2 games, but they have also played defenses named Chicago and Minnesota. This is a team that the Buccaneers, if Baker can sustain this next week against Philadelphia is a step up in competition. I don't think anybody in their right mind would say anything different. That's the prove it game for the Buccaneers. If they can be highly competitive, even if they lose that game 29, 26, 28, 21, if they're competitive against the Eagles, you're going to be able to start believing.
Moral win.
If they get the doors blown off of them, people are going to look and say, oh, they were 2-0 because they played the Vikings and the Bears. The Bears looked completely lost. There's Justin Fields saying that the coaching was the reason he's looking so bad. They did get DJ Moore involved earlier and often, but it fell apart.
Bears have at least one new coach with their defensive coordinator resigning today from what I saw.
Yeah, that's a wild story. A defensive coordinator for the Bears has resigned after he was raided by the FBI.
Well, I saw that there's not any, I think, corroboration about the raid. He did resign, but I'm not sure if anybody was quote unquote raided.
Well, apparently the team was let know that he was being investigated and possibly raided by former Chicago Bears player turned FBI agent Charles Peanut Tillman. Because the world's not weird enough without NFL safeties and superstars becoming FBI agents. But the Bucs running game is a little bit concerning still, but the passing game, Godwin and Evans, both solid. Baker Mayfield looks pretty good. Let's see how they do against the Eagles. But 2-0 is 2-0. You're 2-0 in the NFC South, which has 3 of those teams so far. All you got to do is keep pace and win those games against your division. You should be just fine.
Yes, Rachaad White looked good. Then again, as you would say, pump your brakes. This is the Bears defense. He's a good RB2 play against bad defenses, which the Bears definitely are. He's the clear number one in Tampa, and there's nothing to suggest Tucker is going to come anywhere near taking that job from him anytime soon. Rachaad White is a good matchup for bad teams, but I tend to think a flex bench or bench even for bad matchups and plug
Yeah.
somebody else in there as Fields just had an unbelievable, abysmal day. Protection was fine. Guys were getting open, but for some reason he just couldn't pull the trigger. And definitely credit to Mike Evans for leaving all the off field contract stuff off the field and balling for the second week in a row. And Godwin, while not the stud that he quite was from last year, is more about consistency. And the Bucks are 2-0, and yeah, a little bit of a challenge looming ahead this week. But for now, we're happy.
Yeah. 2-0 is 2-0. The Eagles will be the test. Now, I don't know if there's a team in the NFL you would be more concerned about today than the 0-2 Los Angeles Chargers. They lost to Miami week 1. There's a lot of people. Rich Eisen had them at number 3 in his power rankings, the Dolphins, that is. Pat McAfee said if the NFL, the best two teams, one in each conference, played in the Super Bowl on Wednesday, as of Monday, those two teams would be Dallas and Miami. So, week 1 against the Chargers, I think you can write off as two great teams going head-to-head and them coming up on the wrong side. Then they go to Tennessee and lose, given without Austin Eckler, but they lose to the Titans, who looked completely lost in week number 1. Brandon Staley has a history of not finishing the job with these wins. They've got great weapons in Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, a quarterback that has shown the ability to be a big play, top-tier quarterback in Justin Herbert, and yet they're being outscored by the Titans. It's concerning when the Titans only have really Derrick Henry, who was a little banged up through this game. DeAndre Hopkins wasn't big. Treylon Burks did have one big catch, but he wasn't anything special. And yet the Chargers couldn't get the job done again. No disrespect to the Titans, who are now 1-1. I think the NFL is seeing the Chargers losing games more than they're seeing them win games in games like this against Tennessee.
Oh my! OMG! Remember before this week flying. OMG! Grab Joshua Kelly. That's when you wanted this week go as a. Oh my good God! The Chargers D is absolute blarg. The Chargers O looks sexy as hell for fantasy, but is also blarg in reality. As I can see losing to your fish who are just that darn good this year, but to the Titans, I mean, Ryan Tannehill actually earned a nickname from a Dolphin fan called Shownuff. I mean, and there's a nickname this week because so many Dolphin fans wanted to take his record-setting performance in the overtime loss to Arizona and anoint him prematurely. That was from the Sun Sentinel. So, yeah, because Tennessee looked good, but that was a good huge part of how bad the Chargers defense was. This was a game where the Chargers ended up getting 5 sacks and still lost. Henry was held to just 80 yards and a whopping 25 rushes, and that didn't matter. So yeah, when Spears is going to be a monster, if Henry gets hurt, and we already have a little concern.
It's a toe injury to Derrick Henry. He played half a game with a broken foot last year or 2 years ago. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, because Spears ended up getting more points as the third down back than A.J. Dillon got as the lead over in Green Bay, to give you an idea. So definitely worth a stash.
Yeah, it says more about A.J. Dillon than Tajay Spears, I think, but still not good. But the Chargers falling to 0-2. It's tough. They played the 0-2 Minnesota Vikings, who, Minnesota's offense has looked pretty good. If their defense can hold it all, I kind of think Minnesota's going to win that game. We'll make our official picks later, but I mean, that's one of the in the confidence pool. It's one of my lower 2 or 3 games this week, and I go back and forth. I think right now I'm sitting on Minnesota because just they're at home, and the Chargers just find a way to lose this style of game.
Are they cursed?
I think Brandon Staley's just not a good coach. I think he's a great coordinator, but I don't think he's a good head coach, personally. Next up, the Cardinals.
We go to Arizona.
Well, they were up 20-0 at halftime and lose this game 31-28. The Cardinals fans were celebrating the loss because, well, they don't want to win this season. They are rebuilding. They want those early draft picks. The Giants were shut out through the first 90 minutes of football this season, 60-0. They're now 1-1. The Giants, after struggling big time against the Cardinals in the first half and the Cowboys in week number 1, get the right to go to San Francisco and play the 49ers, which is the game we'll preview a little bit.
Get the right to get the living you-know-what kicked out of them.
Yeah, no Saquon Barkley in that game. I mean, we can talk about the picks later, but we're both agreeing, and it's both the home team, I'm sure. But the Giants do get the job done. Daniel Jones was a very good performer in that second half. You saw a little bit of life out of Darren Waller. You saw some life out of some of the other receivers. Jalen Hyatt, 2 big catches. Sterling Shepard was on the field and productive. So maybe the Giants are better than we thought after week 1. Maybe they're exactly what we thought they were going to be coming into the season, where it's a number 3 team in that division, even though Washington is also 2-0, which we'll get to here in a little bit. The Cardinals, though, fall to 0-2. Again, I don't think they want to win games, really, because they're a bad team. They need those draft picks. They have Houston's, and they have their own. They could be easily 1-2 in the draft next year, and that's the kind of thing you need to revamp an entire offense. Kyler Murray still on the shelf. Joshua Dobbs looked a lot better this game than he did week 1, but the Giants get the win. Cardinals are real bad. I don't know what else to say about this one.
Yeah, because the Cardinals completely owned the first half while the Giants completely owned the second. It was like a switch flipped for Daniel Jones in the second half. Dude was throwing darts left and right and was running all over the place. Josh Dobbs was legit good in this game. And, yeah, you're kind of going, okay, what about Hollywood and Ertz?
Hollywood was good this week. He really was. I benched him, and he had a pretty good week. I believe he had a touchdown and about 70, 80 yards. So not a bad week for Hollywood. Ertz, I don't know what I feel about Ertz, honestly. I think long-term he's going to be a little bit of a risk. Just too old. But the big thing with the Cardinals is they're really competing for the top draft. It's a good win for the Giants, even though they look bad for the first half of that game.
And we go to the team that the Giants are going to face on Thursday night.
Yep, the 49ers win over the Los Angeles Rams 30-23. Kyren Williams was very good. Puka Nacua, 20 targets. If you didn't pick him up in fantasy, you're probably not going to enjoy what happens the rest of the season, because even when Cooper comes back, I think he's going to be a big part of this offense because he's just too good. The Rams could be a very sneaky, dark horse Super Bowl caliber team. They stood toe-to-toe with the Niners. They dominated the Seahawks. And I really think they could be a much better team than we expected. The defense held up okay. They held the Niners in check and at least gave themselves a shot. But the Niners look every bit of the best team in football. Brock Purdy missed a couple long touchdowns, but was still very good. Christian McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey. And really not much to say here besides the fact that the Niners are what we thought, and the Rams are probably better than we originally thought.
Yeah, they are who we thought they were, as you might have heard of Pika Pika on the internet, but in LA right now is Puka Puka taking over both fantasy and reality. Williams' decent fantasy options. It's more about the 49ers, as the Rams are really the team that everyone is just waiting for Kupp to come back anyway. And just a quick look, Ayuk is hurt, probably not going to play this week. Deebo's looking more like his 2021 self, CMC. Well, he's CMC, and kind of wondering, is there a little bit of load management going on with George Kittle at this point?
I think there's just too many mouths to feed. Now, again, Brandon Ayuk is questionable. Keep an eye on those injury reports for tomorrow. I think he's got a shot to play, but it's not a guarantee. And we move on. The Cowboys, 30-10 win over the Jets. And Zach Wilson is Well, he's still Zach Wilson. Looked great in week number 1, coming from behind against the Bills. Wasn't spectacular, but good enough to get the win. I think the emotion, the adrenaline played into that. The Jets, though, they had one big play to Garrett Wilson. That was it offensively. The Cowboys just dominated this game. Cowboys are 2-0. They look every bit of a Super Bowl contender so far. The Jets, though, I think we got the message. Unfortunately for them, their hopes of winning a Super Bowl are done. Sauce Gardner, after the game, deleted his Twitter. Breece Hall, 4 touches after the game, tweeted 4 football emojis. There's some disconnect, there's some discontent, and there's some issues in New York with these Jets now that Aaron Rodgers is gone. So the Jets are in real bad shape for this year. I don't think anybody is surprised once they lost Aaron Rodgers that the win-loss total was probably going to be worse than expected, but the infighting is very concerning if you're a Jets fan.
Yeah, Zach Wilson's stat sheet ending up looking horrible. But before the game was out of reach, he was pretty okay, even though he was pressured basically 70% of his snaps. He was stepping up in the pocket. He was being decisive, and he was protecting the ball. All 3 of his interceptions came in the fourth quarter when they were down by 3 scores, and he was trying to play hero, get them back in the game. Hall just had a bad matchup. It doesn't get any better for the Jets going against the Pats this week. So, wonder if we'll be seeing any more chirping on Twitter or whatever the heck it's called these days.
We'll see. I don't think there's a solution out there for the Jets at this point. Unfortunately, they have a very talented roster that just will not be able to get it done because this quarterback. But Cowboys, 2-0. They have dominated Zach Wilson and Daniel Jones. So maybe pump the brakes on the belief that this is a top end best defense of all time type of thing. They're a very good defense, but a couple weeks from now, they play the 49ers. That's going to be the measuring stick game for the Cowboys and what the reality is.
We them boys not trending yet.
I mean, if you're a Cowboys fan, we them boys, how about them Cowboys? That's all what they're ready to start screaming in everybody's face. But you have to understand the opponents you've played have been garbage. Oh, by the way, they play the Cardinals in week 3. So Joshua Dobbs, Daniel Jones, and Zach Wilson for the first 3 weeks.
Oh, good God.
Cowboys should be 3-0. They should. They have no reason not to be. But they're doing it in impressive fashion. When you play bad teams, you want to blow them out, and that's what they're doing at least.
Prognostication: first half Cardinals are up 100-0, and Cowboys come back and win it.
No, I've got Justin Fields in the fantasy league, and I could have picked up Dak or Jared Goff. I picked up Dak and then dropped him for Jared Goff because I thought, well, the Lions are playing the Falcons. They're going to have to compete that whole game, whereas Dak could be sat in the early parts of the third quarter because the game is over. So, yeah. Next up, Commanders.
We're going to Denver.
Mile High. Oh, this was a good one. Commanders 35, Broncos 33. Broncos got out to a 21-3 lead. The Commanders stormed back to get up 35-27 before the Broncos convert a last-second Hail Mary to get within 2 and then fail on the 2-point conversion to lose. The Broncos have lost games to the Commanders and the Raiders, and then their reward is a week 3 game in Miami for the home opener for the possibly best team in the AFC, Miami Dolphins. If you've watched them, it's not that much of a stretch to say that. The Broncos, though, encouraging. Javonte Williams looks pretty good. Russell Wilson showed flashes of what he was in Seattle. We'll see if he can maintain that against the Dolphins defense. It looked a lot better. We'll get to that shortly.
Yeah. As Sam Howell definitely looked good. He's now 3-0 as a starting NFL quarterback, even with the score being 21-3, with Denver being up big at one point. Howell and Washington did not give up and kept chipping away.
And do you remember who I said the biggest steal in the draft was?
Brian
Robinson, the running back 3 on the season and led the league in points this week.
Yeah, with 18 carries and 3 pass target. Got some tough defenses coming up with Buffalo and Philly, though.
Yeah. It's not going to be great every week for Brian Robinson, but the Broncos have a good defense, and he played pretty well. And Arizona had a pretty good defense as well, and he played pretty well. So it's not going to be great every week. But Brian Robinson, that's a name. If you can get him at this point, it's going to pay off some dividends. You can still probably get him on the cheap, even though he is the running back 3 on the season.
Okay, so there's a couple questions out of this game with the Washington pass catchers. Dotson a little bit disappointing. Droppable yet?
I think so. I don't know if you're going to have better options on the waivers. That's yours. I don't know if you're going to have options that are better on the waivers, but I think at some point you have to understand he's just not really doing it. If you have someone like a Puka Nacua on the waivers and that's who you have to drop, go for it. If Jerome Ford is on your waivers and that's who you have to drop, that's your worst player, go for it. But don't just drop him just to drop him. Give him another week or two. There's still going to be a work in progress for the Commanders offense, but 2-0, again, 2-0 is 2-0. I don't think we believe they are the same caliber as the Cowboys and Philadelphia Eagles, but as of today, they have the same record.
Okay, got to ask about Perine out there a ton, 50% snap share, just not involved with the offense. Was he just pass blocking?
It looks that way. Javonte is the number one, and then after that, it's just going to be a little bit of a timeshare and blocking work. I don't think it's going to be real useful for Perine to be on the roster.
And do you buy either Brandon Johnson or Marvin Mims?
No, I don't.
So
Brandon Johnson's available in a lot of dynasty leagues where we have super deep rosters, and I'm just not interested. Marvin Mims, a little bit more, but I think with Jerry Jeudy's going to get more integrated in the offense as we go forward. Cortland Sutton had a pretty solid game. So I think Mims has a better shot, but that's still not super enticing in a fantasy format.
Shall we go to Foxborough?
Yes, the land of the stupid lighthouse. I have to say this. They spent so much money to build a lighthouse, and it has a bell in it. Lighthouses don't have bells. It's not a friggin' church tower, bell tower. They have foghorns. Why is it a bell? Joel, why? Why is the lighthouse got a bell instead of a foghorn? I understand you can ding the bell and it's like, I get it. It's like the giant drum in Kansas City or the raising of the flag. Or it's I understand these teams want the Vikings the horn. I get they want something like that in their stadium, but first of all, bells ding 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 ding. Second of all, lighthouses do not have bells. Rant over. Anyways, the Dolphins go in to the stupid bell tower place and win 24-17 in a game that really wasn't that close. Dolphins were up pretty handily this entire game. I know at one point you said the Dolphins they're outpacing, they're outclassing the Patriots. Patriots do make a little bit of a rally in the late stages of this game. Raheem Mostert, though, a great game. Tyreek Hill, you knew they were going to take him away, but he still had a good game, a touchdown and more than 50 yards receiving on about 5-6 catches. So not a bad fantasy outing, even with him being bottled up. And the big thing for Miami is the offense looked good. The defense looked better than they did week one by a lot. They held Ramondre Stevenson in check. Ezekiel Elliott was a non-factor. And they turned the ball over when the Patriots started driving. They stopped them. They got the turnovers when they needed. Good defensive performance for the Dolphins. The Patriots, though, they're showing a lot of grit. They've played the Eagles and the Dolphins, 2-0 teams, arguably top 5 teams in the league. So Patriots are 0-2. It's a tough start, but I don't think the Patriots are as bad as the record says they are. And I think by the end of the year, they're still going to be a fringe wild card competitive team. It's just they've played arguably 2 of the best teams in the football the first 2 weeks, both at home, both losses.
Yes, Patriots took away the deep threat, and the Dolphins took what was given. So the run game thrived, and we definitely saw that from Mostert with his monster run late that just absolutely shredded the Patriots. You're trying to figure things out. Juju continues to confuse, gets a few passes for all less for 8 yards. can't start, but at the same time, not sure if you want to drop him. So what do you do about Juju?
I don't think Juju is real important. I think the only fantasy asset on the team you want is going to be Hunter Henry and Ramondre Stevenson for right now. Maybe Mac Jones in a deeper league or a super flex kind of league, but I don't see a place for Zeke, and I don't see a place for Juju. Maybe Kendrick Bourne at wide receiver, but it's just a tough offense. They're going to be a defensive minded team, ground and pound outside of that. So we'll see. I think the Patriots are a lot better than the 0-2 record that they have, but the Dolphins look every bit of a top contender in the AFC at 2-0.
I know that you can definitely buy Hill and Waddle, but what about Mostert going forward?
As long as he is healthy and the starter, I fully believe, and I have no evidence, no basis for this other than just my feeling on how this team would be and what they probably should do. I fully think they're going to trade for Jonathan Taylor, one way or the other. And if they do that, Raheem Mostert is dead for fantasy unless he is traded to Indianapolis. Then he might have a life in Indianapolis. But I don't see the Colts trading for Raheem Mostert. Maybe Devon Achane and a second round pick. Get someone young with some juice. But I fully believe that he's going to get traded to Miami. Again, no evidence, no proof, no inside information, just a hunch. And sometimes my hunches are good. Like when Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, and I said it immediately. That's what happened.
Yeah. Hill and Waddle are scary, but Waddle is a definite one to monitor for week 3.
Yeah, you want to monitor him for the concussion, but if you have him, he's only going to miss a week or so. He's going to be just fine long term. It's not a major debilitating, can't run, can't catch kind of injury. And next week, the Dolphins, it's a home opener against Denver. You got to expect big things on both sides of the ball for the Dolphins going forward.
Shall we go to the 2 absolute bestest games of the whole week? # sarcasm.
Yeah, let's start with the lesser of the 2, I guess. Sorry, thinking about those games makes me tired. New Orleans 20-17 win over the Panthers. Wasn't that close to a garbage time touchdown to Adam Thielen. Gave Joel a win in the 16-teamer and cost me a win in a different league. So thank you, Adam Thielen. Would be 2-0 there, but no, 1-1 instead. But the Panthers did not look good in really any way, shape, or form. Miles Sanders was underwhelming. Bryce Young does not look ready. But the Saints offense, maybe it's no Alvin Kamara, and they really need that guy because Jamal Williams was not that guy before he got hurt. Tony Jones Jr., 2 touchdowns, but you get the ball down close to the goal line. It's not that hard for a professional running back to get into the end zone. Michael Thomas, big first half, disappeared in the second half when it was all Chris Olave. Saints have a good defense. 20-17 win. They are 2-0. It's still not a division we're confident in the top end talent of. So the Panthers look like the bottom dweller in that division, and there is concern that Bryce Young is going to take a little more time to develop as far as an NFL quarterback is concerned.
Is Shaheed worth a monitor because the dude has?
Yeah, Shaheed's worth it. Shaheed is going to be an opportunity to play at times. He's not going to be an every week starter, but you have to play him when the matchup is good, and you're going to get bye weeks where he is going to be just such a boom bust kind of player. He is a Gabe Davis type where he can go off and have a massive, massive game. And hopefully Joel comes back and joins us. Usually he's back by now, but he can have a massive game and just come out of nowhere, even if he only gets 4 or 5 touches. So Rashid, I don't even know. Here comes Joel. I did answer your question about Shaheed, and I do think, as much as I can't say the name, he is definitely worth monitoring on the waivers. He's going to have some moments where he's going to be a lot like Gabe Davis. He's going to blow up a few times.
You were saying boom bust.
Yeah. And, let's move on to the last game.
But I just briefly do want to say that O-line is definitely worrying for Carr and the Saints. And while the wide receiver room is stacked, with Williams now out, is this a Taysom Hill feast week?
It might be. I mean, it's the last week without Kamara. Maybe Kendre Miller, who looks like he's going to be healthy for the first time, gets some opportunity, but I think Taysom Hill's going to be involved.
Okay, and just Who's worse? Which offense is worse, Panthers or Bears?
Panthers.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
I think the Panthers are worse. The Bears have better weapons. That's the end of it. That's why they're better, but it's bad on both fronts. All right, last game. Steelers win 26-22 in what was kind of an oddball game. Deshaun Watson didn't look bad, but he didn't look good either. Did have a fluky interception return for a touchdown on the first play. Of course, the Browns losing Nick Chubb, I think that took all of the air out of the sails for the Browns. They did not look like a complete team after that. Jerome Ford did come in and have a good game in relief, but it just looked like the heart and soul element of the Browns kind of went off the field next to Nick Chubb on the cart. The Steelers, though, credit to them, got the win, but some concern. Najee Harris did not look good. George Pickens had a fantastic game, and Jalen Warren looked like he had more pop, which if you drafted Najee Harris, you are not happy about. The Steelers, though, 1-1. Browns 1-1. Both teams ahead of the Bengals, behind the Ravens. Long season, but the Steelers did look like a team going in the right direction. And for the second straight week, I don't think the Browns look bad, but their offense leaves some to be desired.
Yeah, whatever magic carpet ride that everybody thought that it was going to be for the Pittsburgh Steelers, all of a sudden the magic either wore off or there wasn't enough of it cast on the carpet to even begin with. They are atrocious. As you mentioned, Najee Harris owners that you saw what he did last year, and all of a sudden this year you're sort of like going like the guy entering the room going like that. It's like what's going on? Just Pickett just absolutely sucks. We're not sure what his run blocking scheme is. Would it even work in the XFL or the USFL? Even though I hear both of those are going to be merging into one. That's what Dwayne Johnson's trying to do. Just Najee is met in the backfield, 2 to 3 defenders a second after each snap. No room to move, run, and I'm trying to figure out what it was. You had major media personalities trying to say that the Steelers were going to make that next step. Because you look at a team like this, and granted, it's the Cleveland Browns aren't the 49ers, they're not the Chiefs, but they should be beatable as a division foe if you want to say, okay, this is our year. We're ready to ascend to the next level. We're ready to make the next step up. This is when you make the statement, and they did anything but.
They got the win. That's the big thing for the Steelers, but yeah, a little bit concerned that maybe
it was a win, but it was anything but a pretty win.
The Steelers might be going into quarterback purgatory, where they're good enough to compete for the playoffs and not have any shot of winning the title, and avoid having a good enough draft pick to get another quarterback in there. So, not great, but we'll see what Pittsburgh does the next few weeks. Again, it's only been 2 weeks. So maybe this Pittsburgh offense will look a little bit better going forward. Maybe Cleveland is just starting to roll. I don't know. But again, it's 2 weeks. Let's pump the brakes on any major assumptions. I think we know the Jets with Zach Wilson, because we saw it last year, not going to be as good. There's some concern around the Chargers that we mentioned. Teams like the Dolphins and San Francisco and a couple other 2-0 teams, Dallas, they look like legit contenders. And then there's some bad teams out there still. Houston is still a bad team. Arizona is still a bad team. But a lot of the rest that I didn't mention, there's still question marks. There's still time to figure things out. Anyways, Thursday Night Football tomorrow night. San Francisco hosting the New York Giants without Saquon Barkley. So you're going to play Christian McCaffrey. You're going to play Brandon Ayuk if he plays. You're going to play Deebo Samuel and George Kittle as well. I think Darren Waller is the only thing on the Giants offense that is worth a flyer on this week, but don't expect great things. San Francisco's got a great defense. But all of that being said, Joel, we have to formally make a pick. Who do you got?
Let me think. I think I'm going to choose that team from San Francisco, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm taking the Niners as well. Not a whole lot of explanation needed. For 6 quarters out of the 8, they were outscored 60-0. The Niners can do that to them as well. So I'm going to take the Niners. Anyways, time for final thoughts. And Joe, you're up.
just a quick meme as with everything going on in the world. Sometimes you just need a little humor or a chuckle or two. And trust me, with everything going on these days, you definitely need some major chuckles. There's a meme recently put out as it was you have tough few weeks for losing expensive jets. On the left, the of course picture of the missing F-35 from the military. On the right, Aaron Rodgers being carted off. And that's my final thought.
My final thought is about Nick Chubb. That was the first injury that made me sad. Like, you see people like Damar Hamlin was a different thing because he actually died twice on the field and had to be resuscitated. That made everybody sad. That made everybody terrified. But it wasn't an injury. That was a life-altering, a life-threatening situation. That was a medical thing, unrelated. Nick Chubb made me sad. Watching him get hit and seeing the replay, because I did look for it online because I was just curious, like, how bad could it really been? It was bad. But it made me sad. But it also made me realize that these guys like Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and Jonathan Taylor want their money, want their contracts. Do you understand why? You see what happens to Nick Chubb. There were talks that amputation was on the table in the early moments after this injury. I don't know how true or how much speculation that was, but it was out there. There was a tweet from a guy from CBS that said it was on the table. And especially the running backs who don't get their money, do you understand now why they are wanting what they want here? They want their paycheck. They want it now. They want guarantees. They don't want incentives that they can be robbed of because Minkah Fitzpatrick tries to get a hit on you and it happens to connect with the knee. And again, not Minkah Fitzpatrick's fault per se, even though it was his contact that caused the injury. That's part of the game. He's not going after it intentionally, and he was hurt later and went to the hospital overnight himself from that game.
Not like Bountygate.
No, this was not a Bountygate type of thing at all. I don't believe it, and until I see proof otherwise, I'm not going to believe it. But when you see a guy like Nick Chubb, who fortunately did get paid, he's I think 3 years, $36 million with $20 million of that guaranteed. He's going to be fine. And I have a feeling if this does become a career-threatening thing, they will still cover more of that salary than they have to. Just a hunch. But at least now I can safely say, even though the NFL filed a grievance against the NFLPA for these running backs overstating injuries to try and ramp up the price in their contracts, I understand why they're doing what they're doing. I think the NFL needs to look into how to protect their running backs the same way they protected their quarterbacks and to compensate them in ways that they're not being compensated right now.
Something that also makes me, with the Sports Shop Audible here, a comment from Aaron Rodgers about how much in favor are you of stadiums going to all grass, especially with Aaron Rodgers and the comments about the turf and what led to potentially his injury?
Aaron Rodgers was not because of the turf. I'm going to say that right now. It was because he's a 39-year-old athlete with a calf problem in that leg already, who had a 300-pound man falling on him while he tried to make a very athletic move. You can see it in the video if you watch that one. His foot is flat, but his ankle is already flexed to capacity going forward, and then he is pulled down. That's going to happen on grass as well. J.K. Dobbins' injury happened on grass. Nick Chubb's injury happened on grass. Now, I do think it's better long-term for the players to be on natural grass as opposed to turf, because turf is harder. It's more rubberized. I mean, a lot of players said, hey, it's hard on my feet. It's hard on my shins. It's hard on my knees in ways that grass just isn't. So I do agree. If you can go to grass, go to grass. If Green Bay can grow natural grass that they do not let anybody other than the football players and coaches and officiating staff walk on at any point in time, because they don't. If you take a tour, you can get on the field level. You do not touch the grass. If they can keep grass growing in northern Wisconsin everybody should be able to grow grass one way or the other. So I do support going grass, but I do want to say I don't believe that is the injury.
That could also be taken out of context.
It could be.
Mm-mm.
But all of that being said, it's just, again, hope for the best for Nick Chubb. Hopefully we see him back. He's too good of a player to lose full time. But I definitely understand why these players are holding out and wanting more money because they are the most. I mean, you look at injuries, it's usually the running backs at this point, or defensive backs that are getting really, really hurt. So hopefully this
or running quarterbacks.
I mean, you're taking a lot of pops, a lot of punishment, and you're in tight with these big guys, and it just takes one to fall on you the wrong way, or even
Lamar Jackson last year missed most of the remainder of the year. Tyler Huntley had to be in. Jalen Hurts missed a definite part of the year last year because he was a running quarterback.
Yeah, it's tough.
Anthony Richardson, I think, already this year.
Yeah, I mean, a concussion is a protect yourself kind of thing, whereas like Lamar and Chubb and some of these other guys, there's nothing like J.K. Dobbins didn't do anything wrong. He didn't not protect himself. He just happened to fall down and get taken down in the wrong way. Richardson will learn. Don't take the big hit. Keep your head out of things the best you can. But yeah, you understand why they want the money when they want it now, especially the running backs that are not getting paid. So anyways, that is my final thought. And that is our time for the Sports Shuffle tonight. I am flying Ryan Gilchrist along with
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin.
Be back to recap Thursday Night Football and do the rest of our week number 3 picks. I believe Friday or Saturday. One of the two. Typically it's 2 days later, but who knows? We're not professionals. Anyways, it's already been 2 weeks of the NFL season, and with that, we go.